Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon or good evening, depending if you are in Asia. It's a joy to be here sharing with you this panel. It's called Brazilian Ecosystems of Sustainable Fashion, Results and Perspectives of Collaborative and Successful Projects. In this 1 hour and a half, we will have with us, besides myself as a moderator, we have Edmundo Lima, who is the executive director of Abvtex, that is the Association of Retailers in Brazil. Marielle Christ, manager of the Apex Brazil program and the Sustainability League, that is a leg that we have in the Texbrasil program. Thank you very much for your partnership. Andrei Slivnik, executive of ILO in Brazil. We are developing with him the scope projects, and he will be able to speak about it later. And Lucilene Dansinger, senior constructor of Reos partner and director of Colabora Sustainable Fashion, who is also a project that we participate with other agents as Abvtex, etc. I would like to start by thanking OECD for the opportunity to be here making the side session during the annual conference made by this association. I want to also thank the speakers for the participation. Some of them are on vacation, so I want to thank you for your efforts to be here, and the public in general for the interest, and Apex particularly for the realization for the Texbrasil. Texbrasil is a partner for more than 20 years and shows the importance of cooperation. I would like to mention this project, this title of our meeting, because I think we have interesting cases to present the words. We are amongst the 5 top producers in the world, but we are not a major player as China or as Bangladesh in the international trade. We are growing, but Brazil has a peculiarity, and our evolutions of the international business is happening in the internationalization of retail and the Brazilian brands that are doing an exceptional work in the worldwide market. So as I said, we have a very nice fashion value chain, one of the top in the planet, more than 5,000 companies producing 1.5 million jobs related and 140,000 specialized sales points. And we have a complete ecosystem that goes from the raw material and the end product, going through the winning and finishing and dyeing and printing and apparel and the retail. And all of that is interconnected with research, development, and innovation. So our objective today is to share our experiences with different projects that are ongoing in Brazil. It's not only that, but this is what we highlight because they are evolving very importantly in the last few years. And we have to debate how this cooperation has been essential to evolve in our production network and transformation network. So without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to each one of our speakers. And I will start here with Marielle, who is going to make a brief introduction of the projects that we are involved in. Thank you very much, Marielle. Welcome. The floor is yours. Thank you, Fernando. Good morning, everyone. To our panelists, good afternoon, or maybe good evening for those who are listening to us. It is a huge pleasure to be here with you. On behalf of Apex, I want to thank you for the invitation to be participating in this relevant side session with such an important topic. And I want to congratulate Abit for having the initiative to organize this side session with the support of the Texbrasil program. And as it was already mentioned by Fernando, Apex Brazil is the official agency of the Brazilian government to promote the international businesses, whether they are promoting the exports or attracting new investments. And in a way to reach more capillarity and to be deeper in the sectorial uh, action. And we made a lot of partnerships with the representative agencies from different sectors of the Brazilian economy. Today, we have partnership with more than 50 sectors that represent since agribusiness, industry, and services. And one of these successful partnerships that we have with Abit, the Brazilian Association of Textile and Apparel, is the Texbrasil that we make along with more than 20 years. And Texbrasil has as an objective, the main objective, to promote the internationalization of the textile industry and the Brazilian fashion. So all the textile chain, from the technical weavings, the technical fabrics, textiles and apparels in different niches, but at Beth and beyond, and to work with the companies in order to develop strategies in this global market that is so challenging. And in these programs, we make many different initiatives, whether to promote the businesses, to promote images, and to develop the companies that participate on Texbrasil, and also innovation and sustainability. And in the last scope of sustainability, I would like to highlight one of the initiatives that is being made by the Texbrasil program since 2020. That is the Brazilian Sustainable Fashion League. That this is a league of companies that congregates companies committed to sustainability in their strategies. And it is also a moment for them to promote the exchange of experiences and the possibility of partnerships and collective work. So in this group, in this league, we aim at working with a mindset so these companies can become a reference to the other companies of the sector, and they can be also engaged in the promotion of productive practices and management in order to highlight their aspects of sustainability and also minimize occasional negative impacts that they might have in their productive sector. And also, as Texbrasil has an international bias, it started as an international bias. Our main objective with the league is to position internationally the Brazilian textile and Brazilian fashion with a collective narrative regarding the commitments of this sector in the sustainability agenda with the global challenges that we face. Very objectively, just contextualizing how the league works. We have two modalities that takes place simultaneously. The first one is group work, that besides the company having the opportunity and to exchange experiences and to share their knowledge, they are also followed by a consultancy firm that aligns many different contents of sustainability and many different topics and focusing on the global context. So we deal with aspects and ESG attributes and circular economy and climate change. We also present cases of sustainable companies and solutions of inputs that they can bring to their productive chains, and also mobilized with the importance of collaboration for these sustainability agendas. Besides these group moments, we also have in parallel individual meetings with this consultancy firm where they diagnose their ESG agenda and they look internally in the company so they can map everything they already do as positive so they can communicate in an assertive way, in a more attractive way internationally. And they indicate possible improvements so they can involve in this process of sustainable practices. Based on that, Along with the consultancy firms, they make an action plan with the objective in the long run and the short run, aligned with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And in this plan, they seek a DNA in a practice way. These action plans for the future, they will bring things, actions, how to improve communication and issues on how to adapt to their productive processes to create new collections with sustainable products and sales strategies on how to reach the end consumer and mobilize them for the importance to buying sustainable products. And so far, we made 2 editions of the league. So in total, we had 15 companies that already did the group meetings and the individual meetings. And they represent different sizes, showing that sustainability, it doesn't matter the size of the company for you to think about sustainability. Those things, weaving and mesh and apparel and many verticalized companies, and the fact that they have different profiles strengthen the possibility of partnerships among the companies themselves, because they are companies that went through this process of training and they have this approval of the league, that are companies who are committed to sustainability and with the future of the fashion that is more and more sustainable. So in general, this is the work of the Sustainable League that is made by Texbrasil in partnership with Abvtex and Abit. Thank you very much, Marielle. Excellent explanation and positioning. We are witness of the evolution of these projects of Sustainable League and all the projects in Texbrasil throughout its history. For a long time, I saw the launch more than 20 years ago. So congratulations on your team, and congratulations on Abvtex. In order to continue the projects that are ongoing in our country, I invite Lucilene, who is the director of Colabora Sustainable Fashion, to talk to us how she sees this project and how she sees the next steps. Thank you very much, Lucilene, for being with us. The floor is yours. Thank you very much, Fernando. Thank you for the invitation to be here with this group. Such a special group. Everyone is here contributing for the fashion industry in Brazil to be more sustainable. Colabora Moda is one of these projects that is ongoing in Brazil right now. We are about 100 people, companies and people and individuals and organizations and companies that are gathered in a multi-sectorial platform to transform the Brazilian fashion in a sustainable and ethical industry. I'd like to highlight that among the members of Colabora Moda, we have manufacturers, retailers, brands, influencers, sewers, professional sewers, education entities, NGOs. And we also have leaders, innovative leaders, who are working on this transformation. And I also want to highlight the importance of our governance. We have a very robust governance to help this transformation and this cooperation to take place in a structured manner. So we have here a few participants in this board. We have Abit, Abvtex, ILO, DGS, that is the leg of research of the union movement in Brazil, La Química, that is the Latin American Association of Small Enterprises, and all of them are working with us to make decisions in this movement. And I want to acknowledge the support of many brands, CEA and Soma Group or Reso, and Santista, and many other important movements who work with fashion in Brazil. I'm not going to mention all of them because it's a huge list, and I don't want to be unfair to some of them that I might forget. But we are working together, and how we are working to transform this sector. We are working to promote cultural changes, to promote new narratives, sustainability narratives, and creating innovative solutions to put our hands on to learn how this movement should happen and how this movement should be conducted. So since 2017, we started thinking on systemically the fashion sector, fashion industry, and we built scenarios for the future of the fashion in Brazil to challenge ourselves and to think what is happening in the future, what are the challenges, and to face them assertively and to create the realities that we need for the fashion in Brazil. And from this vision to envision the future, we built the theory of change, that the future that we want, and we can identify our main objectives related to work and equity, natural resources and climate change, issues related to culture for sustainability, related to education and the training of our professionals, and the strengthening of the whole fashion chain, especially the weakest links that needs to be strengthened. Now, wanting to build this future, we started prototyping solutions. We have already 32 solutions since 2018, and 10 of them are already ongoing. And we are working on issues in racial equality and upcycling, gender equality, development of business models for small business owners, and methodologies and forms of creating new means to train our professionals and to inform the consumers and to educate the consumers about the challenges that we face and the solutions that we come up with. So we are going to learn by doing. What are the means that we need to develop to advance in these systems? And another important stream of Colabora is the generation of content. In 2022, we launched the recommendation to sustainable fashion in Brazil. And this was a work that was built in a participatory manner. And we had a public consultation, a public hearing, and we talked to many experts in Brazil and many documents that were already developed all over the world. And we can give to the fashion industry 17 recommendations that address important issues to us in order to advance in sustainability. So there are 5 sets of recommendations. One is related to the development of the chain and the business environment. The second one is about capital investment to support sustainable fashion. The third one is about the development of the ecosystems to support fashion, sustainable fashion. And here we are talking about the educational organizations, or professional training and professional education. The fourth one is regulatory environments and the legal framework to stimulate the development of sustainable fashion. And the fifth one is about the spread of knowledge with the recommendation to investments in this area. So we can make everybody know what we are talking about, both in the sector and the consumer.
So it's also important to say that these recommendations are directed for those who can do, for those who are able to do something or can influence the advance of these sets of actions. And lastly, I would like to highlight a content that we just launched at the end of last year, and we also had the support of OIT, which was the regenerative fashion sets that help us to understand what are the concepts that we have nowadays about this kind of fashion, and what are the ways that we have to use depending on the size of the company, on the size of the organization, so that we can build a very circular fashion. I'm going to stop here, and then afterwards, if you have any questions, we can answer your questions. I'm here for your Q&A. Thank you so much, Lucilene. Great presentation also. I'm going to pass the floor to Edmundo to talk about his program Moda ComVerso, and I'm going to ask everyone so that we don't exceed our time, because we have more rounds of Q&A also in this 1 hour and a half that we have today in this side section. So Edmundo, the floor is yours, please. Thank you so much, Fernando. I would like to begin thanking Apex Brazil for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, everyone. Hello to everyone here. Well, talking about Abvtex, it's a Brazilian association of textile, and I'm representing the most representative brands in the Brazilian trade and the international trade here, supported by the company since 1999. And since then, we've been working with many different initiatives, projects of collective actions and collaborative actions amongst these brands. And we cannot talk about this movement, Moda ComVerso, without bringing the background, which is the program Abvtex. We've been working with as of 15 years now with the sellers to understand the protocol of the production chain, to have this protocol that's accepted by the brand, so that somehow we are able to monitor this productive chain, stimulating the good practices, the compliance practices, and stimulating that companies adopt good work conditions in their industries, and promoting this work with these retailers. And the program was launched on 2010, so it's 13 years now here in Brazil, and we are carrying out a transformation in this productive chain. Now we have 3,900 companies approved in the Abvtex program, and they hire over 34,000 employees on this textile production, with other brands associated to Abvtex. This program, since its launch, has carried out over 50,000 audits in those plants, and those plants are audited at least once a year in a checklist that obviously is regarding work conditions, social conditions, environmental conditions, and also governance conditions, along with the companies, the associated companies. And what is important to us, obviously, with all this work that we are carrying out in a very collaborative way, the productive chain and entities in the sector and organizations in the sector here in Brazil, it is important to engage the consumer, the Brazilian society in this process, so that society would acknowledge all this effort of the retailer brands, the production chain, in the production of a decent work, on promoting sustainable fashion here in Brazil. So on September 2021, we launched the movement Moda ComVerso, this movement that wants to simulate that companies are going to act, not only suppliers, but also the retailers, so that they can be ethical, humane, and transparent regarding the consumer, so that they are going to bring information on how their clothing is produced, under what condition those clothing are produced, regarding sustainability and social issues and the production of clothing. So the movement is a transparency movement of these actions inside this production chain. And we want to eliminate more practices. We want to promote the decent work. We don't want more child works. We don't want slave work. We want to regulate that productive chain. When we bring information, the idea is to educate that consumer so that when they want to decide what they want to buy, they are aware of the companies that are working in order to have a more sustainable fashion here in Brazil. So Moda ComVerso is a very innovative movement to motivate society to develop those actions inside the productive chain and the retailers to promote a decent work and sustainability in the Brazilian fashion. So Fernando, thank you so much. Thank you for letting me explain. And afterwards, I'm going to be here to explain more if you want about Abvtex and Moda ComVerso. Thank you so much, Edmundo. Excellent explanation. And now I'm going to pass the floor to Andrei. He's going to talk about the project SCORE, which is a project that it's ongoing right now in Brazil, and it's getting into this operational phase. Andrei, please, the floor is yours. Thank you so much, Fernando. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, my dear friends, panelists who are here today with me. Thank you to the audience. It is a pleasure to be here with you, Fernando. I'm going to be very brief because I understand that we have very interesting questions here. But here we have in the OIT very strong history working with the textile industry, and SCORE is not the first project that we are carrying out in the sector. It is a very important industry to OIT in Brazil. Maybe because of one of the main reasons is because it's one of the main deliverers of the transformation industry here in Brazil. You know, we had many different initiatives before we get to the SCORE project. I think we got here very mature with our relationship with all the institutions. And this project brings a dimension, a new dimension that's not only with the work conditions and to advocate against child work and slave work, and we have a productivity system, and we want to develop. SCORE is a global initiative from OIT. It's over 10 years old, and we want to increase productivity and improve work conditions in small and medium-sized companies here for the Brazilian companies / international audience, international companies. The Brazilian companies are very small, but we are talking about 200, 250 employees in these companies. So this program is going to be applied individually in the companies. It's a consultancy work in factory. We want to stimulate those practices between employees and employers, and we want to obtain productivity results in a very human way. We want to bring this humane aspect to the conversation around productivity. So here in Brazil, we chose the textile sector because of the history we had with the sector, but also because of the resources that we had around the sector specifically. And the idea is that we are able to deploy that through the next 2 years. We had 1 year of preparation. We were able to diagnose the sector, identifying the main bottlenecks, what in work conditions in this sector can be improved so that we can unlock productivity issues inside the fabrics, inside the plants. It is a modular program. As a modular program, we have some kind of flexibility to build the best way to introduce the many different subjects that SCORE Global works. And in Brazil, we also had a great dialogue with the sector with two important subjects. The first one is about productivity, supported by the cooperation issues inside. So we work with that conversation inside those plans so that through that dialogue, through that conversation, we can elevate productivity and facilitate all the productive processes. And the second subject that I think has a great appeal to this forum here in OCDE is when we talk about responsible companies. So here we are going to work along with the participants of this initial phase of this project. We have many different subjects of the agenda from OIT. It is agenda very close to the OCDE agenda when we are talking about multinational companies. So we want to talk about these subjects and we want to deploy them also in SCORE scope. So we had a few adaptations in the global methodology. We are not bringing to Brazil a huge package from OIT. We are customizing it so that it makes sense in our implementation context in Brazil that has many different features. We know that I began working with the sector for 1.5 years now, and I have been learning a lot from you. This is such a complex sector with we have so many dimensions in this chain, and we realized from the get-go the need to customize a global program to the specific Brazilian challenges. And so we are finishing this adaptation. And the idea is that we can begin this deployment of a pilot project in the foreseeable months. I think we are going to have a partnership with Senai São Paulo, but I'll be able to detail that more in the future. And the perspective is also to work with Sebrae here with this project. I understand that this is a project that reflects a level of maturity that OIT has been built with the sector, and I think we have a great potential to develop ahead of us. Thank you so much, Andrei. With these words here of Andrei about the SCORE project, we are going now to begin a second part of our session. We are going to have a Q&A session. I would like to remind everyone that's watching us, please, if you have any questions, if you have any critics, if you want to ask something, please use the chat box to ask. We are going to monitor the chat box and we are going to forward your questions to our guests. In the second part of our session, we want to talk about a word that's very talked about, everyone writes about it. It's called collaboration. So collaboration is the key for things to happen. We can see that when we talk about climate, when we talk about other different subjects that are really relevant, they demand collaboration. We have the UN, we have the OMS, we have so many different world organizations that somehow are always trying to bring a very collaborative planetary view. And they are entities that are relatively new after the Second World War. But we are going to talk about collaboration. And you have seen projects that are being built through collaboration. And so I would like to, following this line, what is the role of collaboration in these projects? And I'm going to ask each one of you who already talked that in 3 minutes, you can please convey your message. I'm going to talk again with Marielle, then Luciene, Edmundo, and we are going to close with Andrei. And so now we have from 12 to 15 minutes to try to explain to our audience, how do you guys see this collaboration situation in the industry? As I said, many people talk about it, but it's really nice to exercise that, to practice that. So Marielle, please. Thank you, Fernando. So collaboration, like you said, is the essence of the Apex Brazil program. Abvtex has this program in a partnership with Abit. It's almost 22 years old, and in this period in time, we helped over 800 companies to achieve global markets. And through this time, they have carried out around $10 billion sales. Just to show you in a few numbers how well successful was this program. And in the Texbrasil program, we can see that when we participate in international events in a collaborative way with a network, when we have a Brazilian delegation, we are stronger. We weigh more comparing to those companies if they were going to participate in a individual way. And when we promote our image, this is also very relevant because we are promoting the textile sector and Brazilian fashion as a fashion that is committed to sustainability. We understand that the sector as a whole wins, not only the companies in a very individual way, but fashion as a whole, the Brazilian fashion chain. And when we talk specifically about the Brazilian Sustainable Fashion League, at the end of each of the editions, we have a closing meeting with the companies, and it was really interesting because they all said how important it was to have this exchange of experiences, this exchange of knowledge. Insights from one company works a lot for the other company to apply in their work. And so I think this collaboration was the high point of this program inside our league. And also they were able to have the possibility to find energy and to strengthen eventual partnerships amongst them, which also is a very concrete example on the importance of collaboration. In a general way, I think this is the great objective of the league, so that this is a space that they can not only learn, but they can also teach and collaborate amongst them. Thank you so much, Marielle Lucilene. The project that you manage begins with Colabora Moda Sustentável, which is sustainable fashion Colabora. So the floor is yours. Thank you so much, Fernando. This question is a gift for us here at Colabora because, like the name says, collaboration for us is the means and it's the end. Because when we talk about transforming the sector to have this systemic transformation in this sector, we are talking about challenges that are shared. And so they are challenges like to increase the decent work. We don't want to have degrading conditions in our sector. When we talk about dealing with climate change, when we talk about gender equality and race equality, these are changes that one only company or organization is not able to do it alone. So we need to collaborate it. We need to collaborate to elevate the level of the sector, to improve the business environment, to move forward with those issues. We need to collaborate. Even if we don't want to work with someone that is our competition or with someone that we had some kind of problem in the past, we need to collaborate to advance, to move forward. So collaboration is necessary. This is not something simple. This is not something romantic. Oh, let's collaborate and everything is going to be beautiful. Everything is going to be sunshine and roses at the end of the way because just everyone wants to collaborate. This is a skill that we have to develop. And that's why I say this is not just a means to an end. It is an end because people and organizations, they need to develop to be able to reach their goals and to elevate the levels of sustainability, whether it's cultural, environmental, economical. And so these are many different benefits that we can take from collaboration.
And then lastly, to be very brief, I think that collaboration or cooperation, what we have seen in Colabora Moda Sustentável, it is also crucial to reduce costs of the transaction. For example, we said here in a few moments of the number of certifications that we have. So maybe we can cooperate in this aspect as well, in these points, for us to reduce the efforts so we can elevate the levels of sustainability. And the collaboration helps us in all the aspects of sustainability. So I just want to say that Luciane is cooperating in South Africa. She's participating from South Africa, taking to that place the Colabora Sustainable Fashion that is being conducted here in our country. Congratulations, Luciane. Now, still about cooperation, I want to pass the floor to Edmunda that has Moda ComVerso. Moda ComVerso demands actions from the retail, the wholesales, and the producers, so you can talk broadly with the society. So Edmunda, how do you see this topic of cooperation in the Moda ComVerso and how we can increment this process? Well, Fernando, the cooperation is in the core of our discussions, is in the center that gathers the retailers. We have 115 brands that develop sustainability projects individually, but they already realized that together, collectively, in a collaborative manner, they can have a better impact, a better positive impact in the segment. So now Abvtex is this forum that joins 115 brands discussing initiatives and collaborative projects in the pre-competition phase. We know that these brands, and the challenge is that these brands are extremely competitive in their relationship with the consumer, with their customers. But how can we join these two forces for this work in terms of collaboration and alliance in the main topics and issues to promote sustainable fashion here in the country? So we have been doing that. We have a constant dialogue with the brands, with the civil society organizations, with class entities, with the government. So we can, through this collaborative work, we can promote the necessary alignments and the necessary actions to advance in this ESG agenda in Brazil in this sustainable fashion. And the work and the retailers were learning how to share and to cooperate through the Abvtex program that I mentioned before. In this program, in this construction, in a social environmental a unique social environmental pattern based on the international knowledge and the certifications of productive chain that each one of these major retailers established, we developed this common protocol that is accepted by all of them and committed to the retailers and only to acquire products from suppliers that are approved in these programs. And that reduced a lot the parallel and individual audits that each one of the retailers have. Now, this protocol established these work conditions and all the ESG agenda in the productive chain. And obviously, this is what we communicate through the Moda ComVerso movement. How do we recognize all this effort of the industry that has been investing constantly to make sure this fashion is more sustainable for the ESG agenda? It is through the Moda ComVerso program that we gather efforts from the retailers, the productive chain, and civil society organizations and governmental organizations that support the movement to make this communication among all the actors to take transparency to society. Thank you, Edmundo. Now with ILO, with Andre, that is one of the international organizations created for the cooperation that involves the participation of the labor and bosses and the employers, employees, and government. Andre, please. Thank you, Fernando. Yes, social dialogue is one of the pillars of our mandate. In the case of the implementation of the social scores, I don't think we would be successful at all if it was not through the cooperation and mobilization of partners. Since the beginning, we identified this necessity and we established an executive committee that is made by Abit and Abvtex, and we have a constant dialogue with these institutions. And this dialogue has been critical for the development of the project. But we also sought partnership with other relevant players of this chain in Brazil. With the as systems, as the score has a consultancy and a very robust program, and Senai is a partner. And in ILO, we have been listening very frequently the representation of workers through the CNTV and the workers union movement. And cooperation for us has a few fundamental aspects. The first one is the sectorial knowledge that these players have, and it is absolutely critical. SCORE is not a program dedicated to the apparel industry. It's not dedicated only in Brazil. So this sectorial knowledge that is localized, is specific to Brazil, is critical for the construction of the project, and it has been shown that is essential. The second aspect is the mobilization. Without partnerships, without cooperation, we cannot mobilize the companies and the workers of the companies to participate in this initiative. And this is the project that goes to the end consumers. We have the objective to reach the manufacturers, the factories, and to implement there. So this mobilization is totally critical. Mobilization of the textile retail industry, and the relationship is very close. So if we are not engaged and mobilized, it's very difficult for us to be successful. The third aspect is that we don't have a relationship with these projects and the methodology that we are developing. It's not a appropriation relation. We want this to be long and to continue even after ILO leaves. So these many players can own this initiative, can own our repertoire and our essential needs of our mandates to continue them once ILO is not directly involved in this topic. So I would say that the corporation has these three main functions and totally fundamental for the development of the project. I want to highlight for those who sent questions, I already received them, and we are going to approach them after all the interventions scheduled for this panel. And we are entering now in the final part of the presentation of our guests. And still about cooperation, I'm going to talk to Lucilene and Andre to ask them if they see any difference in Brazil and in the organization and execution of the projects that demand corporations for them to be successful. It's very difficult for a project not to demand cooperation to be successful. But be that as it may, I would like to hear from you as Lucilene is in South Africa, Andre with the ILO, with the international aspect. So how do you see the environment in Brazil, the entrepreneurial vision, and the work of the workers and the employers and employees and the government in this whole big ecosystem that has brought a lot of support to many initiatives? So I'd like to hear from you to know if we have positive points or if you have negative points and how to correct them, if that's the case. And just to say, okay, you're not better than one or the other. So it's not about that. So Lucilene, you have the floor now. Thank you, Fernando. I think this is a wonderful question. We were thinking here and sharing with my colleagues these reflections. And these are reflections that every time we have a global meeting, as we are having now, this issue is raised. So what I would say that it's in general, when we talk about transformation processes, systemic changes, where cooperation is critical, it is easier to agree on collaboration, thinking about the issues. For example, when you make an invitation, when some organizations invite other organizations to work together, it is easier for the invitation to be accepted to think about the topic, to think systemically about the topics, and to build different views, different understandings. But it is more difficult when the invitation is, let's work effectively to transform. Let's put our hands together. And what is the difference that we have, especially in Brazil, especially in the Colabora Moda Sustainable project, is this availability and this willingness to work together, putting our hands on and to work concretely for this transformation. I think that we don't find that very easily in the world. We are working with many different sectors, for example, the energy sectors, the food sector, the education sector, health sector, and taking this a step forward to work together concretely is almost unique. Our other experience, that is another reference in this path that we have traveled in Brazil, is the Sustainable Food Lab, that is a global initiative that started in 2004, in which we inspired ourselves, but we are going beyond that. I think we are to be congratulated in this willingness to work together. So, but in terms of challenges, we still find the challenge to be able to have public and private mechanisms to support the movement, to support this transformation, because that demands a lot of effort. We are talking about many difficult problems to be worked on, and they demand continuous efforts. Reos Partners develops many methodologies for that, and we are learning with the fashion industry in Brazil to improve our methodology. But unlike other markets, we have this challenge to find funding mechanisms for these actions, for these long-term actions that demand these actions. Kale Selene, I think that we do have the ecosystem, we have this willingness, but of course we have to build mechanisms that allows us to fund these activities. It is not easy because the states are very overwhelmed with demands from the society, public demands and collective demands. And more these agendas will have to build solutions that allows us to give self-sustainability to the projects, regardless initial supports that are necessary sometimes. But I see that this financing structure is not only a Brazilian challenge. This is all over the planet. Of course, some states are richer than the others, but the fact is that we have a huge challenge to fund and to have projects that are long lasting and not projects that will end in the middle without leaving a seed that is going to germinate for the others that come later to continue. And still about this issue, I'm going to move away from the collaborative, but also on how do you talk? And now I'll pass the floor to Marielle now, and then Edmundo. How do we do for the companies that compete among themselves to extract from them to work collectively? This is, we see This is what we see in the innovation, that nobody has the gift of knowledge in isolation, and nobody has the isolated resource that are necessary to go through with some challenges. So Apex works with some companies that the competitors also participate. As Edmundo with Moda ComVerso has the retailers that are associated and they are competitors among themselves. How do you join cooperation with competition in the market? Please, Marielle. Thank you, Fernando. Well, as Lucilene was explaining, the sustainability agenda is very complex. So in order to make a significant change, we need to join efforts. But besides that, despite that, we see the direct competitors to be together in a collaborative environment. And when we say specifically about the league, it was also a challenge to find the knowledge and to level this knowledge among them and to work with companies with different sizes and different actions, even inside the textile industry that is so heterogeneous that encompasses different solutions and different uh, products. And besides that, we build uh, an environment where the companies are comfortable to expose their vulnerabilities and their good best practices and what are the projects that are being successful compared to the competitors. And this was also a challenge, and it was dealt very carefully by the consultancy firms and all the team of Texbrasil throughout the development of the league. So, as I said before, we have been working with the mobilization and the importance of the collaboration among the companies throughout this process of content, whether they are exposed. And in general, I think the results is positive. We saw a lot of collaboration and we see very clearly the practical application of this academic concept of competition. The competitors who are cooperating in a way to find significant solutions to the whole, as the chain as a whole. And despite these challenges, we see also many opportunities. We see the optimization of efforts and also investments. So the Texbrasil company is destined collectively to these companies, and that ends up being an interesting optimization. And besides the other things that I mentioned, that's the companies trying to find synergy among. Thank you, Marielle. I'll pass the floor to Edmundo now. Okay, Fernando. Obviously, we experience collaboration in an environment with competitive companies. It's very challenging. I think that the main learning that we had throughout these years, building and developing collective initiatives, is to come up with a reliability environment among the retailers. In the Abvtex forum, we created this trust and reliability environment to discuss problems and to give voice to everyone for this collaboration. We have companies with different profiles, with the targeting of products and segmentations and different strategies among them as a way to compete among themselves. But in the discussions of Abvtex, we always try to find synergies and to find a balance for the development of our projects and these corporations. So these companies have been experiencing an environment that they can develop themselves and have this bird eye view about collective and about co-investment. I think this is an important topic. And what they are developing in their actions, and they tend to have less than what they collectively work. And there are many examples of collaboration in the Abvtex and the development of the productive sector and the participation in the productive sector and the Abvtex program, where in the last 12 years, we have been joining forces and developing and evolving this program with this objective to study the international markets and to understand the best practices and to adapt these practices to Brazil. And of course, making these companies work together to monitor and develop their own productive sectors that is rather complex in Brazil.
And also, we have the interest in a collective way to create awareness, to engage, to educate this consumer and this society to understand the value chain here in Brazil. So the movement Moda ComVerso is now working with 17 retailers, 18 organizations from the civil society and class entities, and also 3,900 entities in this transparency organization. We also developed this work in a platform in the internet that is going to create this network amongst all the companies, and it allows an easy communication for them to detect the challenges so that we can move forward with this collaboration. So we had 3 different parts. Each one of the guests manifested their projects, their visions, their perspectives. I'm going to talk about perspectives through the end, but right now is that moment. It's time to hear and to listen to the questions of our guests here. We are going to have 3 or 4 questions, no more than that, but I'm going to ask each one of you, taking into account how much of that subject you talked about. The first question is from Fabrício Cardim, and I'm going to ask this to Andre, because I'm sure he is the one who should answer this one. So Andre, SCORE is still working with the companies at São Paulo? So yes, we are going to do the pilot activity concentrating the downtown area of São Paulo, but the goal is that the project has enough sustainability in the long term, in the long run, and we want to be able to work with other regions of the country. But mainly right now we are going to work with São Paulo because we have to start somewhere. And São Paulo has a very strong ecosystem so that we can work with that pilot and to adjust, to adapt whatever we have in our methodology. I understand, Andre, can you please confirm if I'm right, that the participation of Senai and the life of Sebrae, when we have Sebrae here, we are going to have this capillarity that people are asking right now. The methodology is being implemented, and that's why we have this partnership with the Senai, and Sebrae possibly is going to be an important actor to capture that methodology so it can be spread in other projects, in other places in Brazil. Am I right? Yes, you are right. We are beginning this work with Senai, Francisco Matarazzo School and Technology Institute from São Paulo. They are also a pilot in the adaptation of this methodology. But once we have this clear design of what is going to work to the Brazilian reality, to textile sector in Brazil, the idea is to use that with other Senais or communities from Sebrae also, and programs in other regions of Brazil. And then we would all also be able to reach a wider audience with different regions in Brazil, and also to have a long-term sustainability for the project, which is one of our main goals. And now I would like to ask a question. I'm going to ask this to Marielle because she talked about this subject, but Batista from the Shoe Federation here in Brazil, he said that he didn't saw any kind of reference from the panelists regarding clean energy, clean renewable energies. And so since Marielle talked about the sustainable leak and that's a part of of Texbrasil. I'm going to ask that question to Marielle. Marielle, please. Sure, Fernando. Although we did not talk specifically about this subject, we have the clean energy issue. It is one of the subjects that we are working with, the training of the companies that go through our network. This is also a reality to many different companies in the sector that have all the productive processes and the development of new products also using clean energy, and also with the use of processes that are really going to minimize the impacts on the environment in the industry. So recently we also were in Abvtex, which is the biggest event, textile event in Latin America. And we were able to see how much the international audience is impressed on how sustainability of fashion Brazilian chain with the production of our textile, how we are able to have an excellent product with high quality, using also a great part of the companies are using clean energy. Thank you so much, Marielle. Now I'm going to ask a question that comes from Júlio Caetano. I'm going to ask Lucilene. Lucilene, this question would also fit Andre, but I think Lucilene, it would be better if Lucilene answers that question right now. So the question from Julio is, what is the participation of the professionals on the plant floor right now? I think it has everything to do with Colabora initially. So Lucilene, please. And then after Lucilene answers, I would like Andre to comment very quickly about this subject. So, like I said, we have over 100 participants, everyone that's here today and many others through these years that went to Colabora Moda. And we always had a special attention to have here in our initiative the participation of sewers, of workers, of seamstresses that are working on the floors plants and that are right at the end of fashion chain. So it's important to understand the participation of those workers, because in general, we are used to work with representatives, and we want to hear the voice of those workers inside the system. And in this process, we had an initiative that was developed with the participation of seamstresses, Bolivian seamstresses, that were able to build the Tramando Juntas project. And today they have a collective, and this collective works to have better work conditions, to have very better paid conditions, to have better work conditions, so that they can work closer to their homes. So these aspects that I'm bringing here, they were brought by the seamstresses. So this quality of work, it's to be closer to where they live, is something that wouldn't be here if it wasn't brought by the seamstresses. And so I would like to highlight that this is something that we value a lot, we appreciate it, and it's something that all the projects have a lot to learn from those who are living the situation. We, from here, we are not able to reach the reality as it is with those seamstresses. Thank you, Lucilene. Andre, can you just say something about this, your project, because I know you have that interaction, but just very quickly, can you Can you answer that question? Because we have many other different subjects as sustainability and retailers. Snow White side. I think this is really important to the project. We want to stimulate cooperation between managers and workers. So we also predict the participation of people who are working at the forest plant, the plant's floor, and they are involved on solutions to improve work conditions inside those plants. So this is a project that has actually this engagement as an element, an essential element. Right. So we have a set of questions right now. Many of them are related. I'm going to try to combine them because we only have 20 minutes left. And so Edmundo, now I think most of the following questions are going to be asked to Edmundo. And so the first one is this one. The numbers indicate that consumers are paying attention to sustainability aspects. Do you carry out periodic evaluations or assessments to check if that's true? And at the same time, we have another question regarding retail. I'm going to combine these two questions. The imported products, how you guys from retail deal with that, especially when we can see different reflections of international platforms that are selling a lot here in Brazil, and also regarding the impact that we can feel in the retail trade, that we can see a few problems here. So these two questions are for you, and then I'll ask the the other ones to Lucilene. And I'm going to try to have a more equal participation from all of you. And so please, Edmundo. Thank you, Fernando. Great questions, and it gives me the opportunity regarding the polls. Yes, we are actively listening the consumer and everything we develop in our movement Moda ComVerso. To create this movement, we carried out a collective project with consumers and society, defining the movement Moda ComVerso. And since then, we are making polls with renowned institutes here in Brazil to understand how Brazilian consumers are seeing us regarding sustainability. In these polls, we can see that the Brazilian consumers, when asked about sustainability, the first element that they worry about is the environment. Not only the use of water, in textile, but also climate, everything comes up very strongly. But when we explore fashion issues, we can see that they worry about work conditions in the productive chain, which is very complex. Mainly, we have small and micro company, small size business here in Brazil, also work conditions. And when we have gender equality, racism, all those elements, they come up very strongly when we listen to the consumers, and we take all that information into consideration to develop our communication actions to that consumer. We have a few projects developed with those retailers, and we always communicate them with a lot of transparency to the consumers. Regarding the other question, when we talk about imports, the retailers are very worried with the responsible origin of the products that they are going to sell on their stores. Mostly the Brazilian producers, 75% of the mix that is offered by the retailers is produced in Brazil. And so we have a stronger worry about the control, somehow the organization of this productive change and the complexity and the use of third parties and fourth parties. So yes, we need to monitor that chain to guarantee good practices along the way, but all the brands from Abvtex are certified internationally, and many of them have international teams to carry out those audits, to be able to assess those suppliers and somehow bring a responsible origin product to these consumers here in Brazil. We worried about this retail here in Brazil regarding the international platforms and the lack of taxation economy. So this is something that this is important because this is unfair competition when we talk about those international platforms, because they use a benefit that is given here in Brazil, the exchange of products without having to pay any taxes, and the international platforms, they use that benefit selling products from entities, legal entities, directly to that consumer without having to pay any taxes. So today, when we have individuals working amongst them and we have the legal entities working with international platforms using this benefit, bringing this unfair competition to the productive chain. So one of the main issues that we are discussing with other entities, other class entities and the government is regarding this taxonomy, this equality of conditions and competition between fashion retail in Brazil and international platforms. Thank you so much, Edmundo. Now I'm going to ask a question to Marielle and to Lucilene. It's from Tatiana. Initiatives to structure the sector are more than necessary, but at the end of the chain, the consumption is going to reveal itself as really hard to be dealt with. The consumer is used to buy cheap and to discharge very quickly. How do you, both Marielle and then Lucilene, how do you both see this statement that Tatiana brings us, and that recurrently is very debated because everybody wants, or at least they say they want, to have a more sustainable fashion, and we need to want it and we need to do it. There's no negotiation regarding that. But at the same time, this is a consumption that is carried out in a very broad way. Even people who are working with us in this agenda, when they want to buy something that needs to be paid with their own money. And so I'm not saying that the platforms, they have problems. We also use those platforms, but the way we can track the product and what we know about the product is we cannot know their background because it's produced outside our territory. So now Marielle and afterwards Lucilene. Yes, Fernando, this is a great challenge. How we are going to make that product just like the consumer wants. So I think we have to understand that companies need to work in a very present way, and communication, how to convey transparency, how to convey the tracking of those products and the process on the production of that product, so that the consumer is able to understand what they are buying and the product that they are buying, that they are committed, the product is committed with responsibility. And when we talk about Texbrasil, our goal is also on that final international public, the final consumer, because we can see patterns, higher patterns of consumption. This is a more demanding public that is looking for those sustainable products, and they want to consume in a more responsible way. Lucilene, please. This is a great question. And I'm going to agree with Marielle. We need to work a lot with communication, because a set of recommendations that we can see on the recommendations to sustainable fashion is really talking about this. We are always saying that what we need to do today, and I'm talking about brands, I'm talking about fashion schools, I'm talking about teachers training, professional training, I'm talking about communication, direct communication with that consumer. And we are not only want to communicate, but we want to educate and communicate. We are talking about so many different initiatives in this sense, and they're not easy to be understood.
We need to develop the capacity to understand this complexity. It is a complex chain that it has a long path from the production of the material until we reach the consumer. So all these issues need to be worked on with the ones who produce. We understand what we are doing so we can communicate in an assertive manner. And we need to communicate the consumers as well so they can award this initiative, so they can prioritize the companies who are working on that matter. And this is a process that it's not in the short term, of course, but we need to count on a very interesting aspect, that is a generational change, and the new generations are demanding that. So while communicating, we are talking to these new consumers, and we believe that in these systemic change systems, these two aspects, when we make the edu communication, counting on these new consumers, two new consumers that are coming to the market and to the productive process, I think we have until 2030 this agenda related to the sustainability that is going to be boosted. Okay, I'm very optimistic about that. Okay, now we don't have a lot of time, but Edmundo, you are going to answer yes or no. Okay, is there a list of green providers? How to access them? Yes or no? Yes, there is. Yes, there is a list of providers in the Abvtex website. That does not mean that they are green or mature. That only means that they are certified. That it means that they comply with this social responsibility and environmental issues. Megali, it was mentioned here the application of certification in the textile sector. Is there collaboration and competition between the existing certifications? Yes, there is. We evaluate not only the international certifications, but also the national ones. We always seek convergence, and we have a mutual understanding. The last one, Marielle, Luisa Lorenzetti asks, last month we had one of the most important fairs, Colombia Tax, in which was you were present. You already mentioned that, but I'm going to ask again. What can you realize about the impression of the international audience about the sustainability practices of the Brazilian companies? Well, very quickly, we realized that everybody is very impressed with our Brazilian company practices. And this is why we have to highlight the communication that we have been doing internally in Brazil, and in both in the productive sector and in the production of products with sustainable raw material. Thank you very much, Marielle. Now, this second last block, I would like to, in 1 minute, so you to talk about the expectation for 2023. Andre? Well, I think that for 2023, the main expectation is to see the project in place and up and running in the factories with the participation and engagements of the business owners and the workers, and maturing of the mechanisms with the Abit and Abvtex, and this is the main challenge for 2023. Lucilene Colabora, what do you see as the goal for 2023? Well, we have 3 working groups working with greenhouse gases and social equality and racial equality and edu communication. And we hope that these initiatives will be consolidated and gain more space in this sector in this year, and that we can seek more partnership to expand our work and to reach more people. Marielle, Texbrasil program, and sustainability leagues and others. Well, we are going to continue the sustainability league work with periodical meetings for the companies who are already part of the league, and we launch new meetings of the league. So if more companies want to join us, we are more than invited. And besides other initiatives of international public policies or as the European Green Deal and a mission of sustainability that a group of companies are going to collect international benchmarkings in Denmark and Copenhagen this year. Perfect. Edmundo, Moda ComVerso. Well, we have a lot of expectations. We are forming partnerships with Sebrae and Senai for the development of this value chain as a whole. And regarding Moda ComVerso, we want to expand the knowledge and the dialogue with the society. So this year, we are going to increase this with Moda ComVerso in all the social networks and in the website Moda ComVerso Oficial at abvtex.com.vr. So our goal is to expand this communication with the consumer in 2023 and advancing the mobilization of society for the sustainability agenda and for more products in this segment. So we are reaching the end of the side session. So I'd like to thank the organization of Abit, and I want to thank our guests and to tell you that we do have an agenda. Brazil does have an agenda and an ecosystem that is really, really interesting, that is very difficult to find in other places in the world. We have almost all the links of the chain of the production and distribution, which facilitates our dialogues and our agreements. On the other hand, we are a very large country with a lot of different inequalities and difficulties in logistics and to make the knowledge reaches different places. But as Abit and ILO and Colabora, Texbrasil, and Abvtex, and many other agencies, they are building it. They have been relevant players in this agenda. We are always participating international meetings presentially that they are coming back or virtually. Marielle said that we are going to have a mission in the global fashion agenda in Copenhagen. We were participating in the Colombia Tax and Premier Vision, and we have the Abit mission in ITMA is that is an important event regarding sustainability, and we do have as a direction. We have the Textile 2030 that is our main umbrella to coordinate our actions in terms of technology, design, sustainability, circular economy, and talents. To all these wide range of topics that comprises the management of a business and a business that is more and more complex. And I call your attention to something important. The companies need to be sustainable economically and financially. We are in a journey. There's no use in throwing a truck of things in, especially in the small size company, because they are not going to be able to handle. And the result is going to be worse. We need to have the capacity to understand the moments, to know the path that we are walking, and the same way to have a clear and parameterized results so we can measure the results in the end. So what we did in this morning or afternoon in the northern hemisphere or at this evening in Asia is to show what Brazil has and represents. So I want to thank everyone. Congratulations on those who stayed with us. Congratulations on our panelists and the Abit team, and thank you and see you next time.